1, 2, 3, 4.
This week's episode is also sponsored by Beer52.com. They are a subscription service where you just sign up and they'll deliver craft beers to your house. And if you want your free order, money off, no cost to you with the exclusion of postage and packaging, then you just sign up, use the code MUDBLOOD on Beer52.com. You get loads of local and foreign IPAs, something for everybody if you're a fan of beer. There's loads of lagers, there's pale ales, there's other kinds of beer, there's loads of stuff. Beer52.com, MUDBLOOD, and get your free case today. That signs you up for a subscription service that brings a fresh case to your door every month. Check it out.
What's one of the most backward places you have in Northern Ireland?
Dundonald.
Right, so you go,
yourself.
it makes Dundonald look like Tokyo.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you just put it into that.
Dundonald's a lovely place. The fuck you talking? It's a lovely place, fuck you.
No, it's not.
Dundonald? It's fine. It's fine. It's not shithole, like. It's not amazing, but it's not shithole. It's not.
Right, anyway. You can keep your bigotry to yourself, lads.
Keep it to a minimum.
Wrong podcast, Susie. It's coming out.
It's a fucking closed season, boys. We're all chilled out now.
We're coming into my season where this is our time of year.
It is your time of year in England. England getting fucked out the Euros, yes.
Oh, general election on the England. It's here for England. Tories get back in and England are in the group stage.
Tories
England can fuck it twice in 1 week.
The Tories aren't getting back
They're
in.
not.
We'll talk a bit about that.
Yeah.
Can we talk a bit about that?
I hope they fucking don't. But see fucking the way it goes over there.
Nah.
Nothing would fucking surprise me.
Have you started?
Yeah, that's us.
Alright, cool. No, it won't, and I'll tell you for why it won't, right? Because ultimately, I think his advisors are playing a fucking game on him, right?
Yeah.
So let's start with the address that he done to the nation, right? So obviously, he couldn't do it in the media room that Boris built for COVID, like something like £5 million it cost. Heaven forbid you gave that to nurses as a pay rise, you Tory bastard, right? They couldn't do it in the media room because...
Do you not like the Tories?
Mate, I'd fucking burn them. So...
Susie's got full Braveheart.
man, do you know what it is about the Tories, right? Right, I'll get to that bit in a minute about the Tories, right? Here's my thing. So he comes out on the lectern. So you probably noticed that the lectern didn't have the Prime Minister's badge or anything like that on it because it's a neutral thing because you're calling an election, right? Now, the whole point of you being Prime Minister and you calling the election is that you have the advantage. You get all your fucking ducks in a row and you have the advantage to go, are we ready? Media team ready? Have we got the videos ready? Have we got the press right? Have we got the policies? Have we got our MPs all in our seats, safe seats, right? Have we got the good MPs in the seats that might be a bit tricky? Yes. Call the election, right? Rishi has clearly fucking had enough of the Conservative Party, right? Because they're all turning on him and turning on themselves and, I don't know, eating babies or something, right? Whatever it is they do in their spare time. Whatever sport they play when cricket's on. And what's happened there is he's had enough. He's like that. I mean, California's fucking lovely in the autumn, right? I don't really want to be out in a warehouse in November trying to convince people to vote for me when the economy, as much as what it's improved ever so slightly, it's not really improved enough to win the public over. So he's like, I'm going to call this. So his advisors went, all right, call it. We'll get an appointment in with the king. Go and see Big Sausage Fingers himself. So he's battered up to see old Richmond Fingers. And the kings went, listen, I would rather see the back of yous, to be honest, because I'm a bit of an environmentalist and you're no, right? So I would be quite happy if yous just fucked off. Go and have your election. So he stood in Downing Street. He's not been able to have it inside, but he stood now. There's a thing in your phone called the weather app. There's a thing in the television called the weather. And they've went, we need to wait till it stops raining, because you don't want a Prime Minister standing in the rain. that's teaming it down, right? Not a Smiddelly raid, like absolutely hosing it, like Glasgow in July. Normally the first weekend in July, you know what I'm saying, William? Right? So it's absolutely hosing it down. And he comes out and he starts to do this really prolonged, winded speech about how great he is and what the Conservatives done and all this kind of stuff. And you're sitting looking at him and he's getting soaking and soaking. When all Rishi Sunak had to come out and do was to say, ladies and gentlemen of the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, I believe it's time, we're in an election year, and I believe it is time now to call an election and put sovereignty in the hands of the British people. And he could even have went, once again, like Brexit, right? Because now they always tout that line. And then went, I've been to see the King, I am calling the election for the 4th of July, and it's only right and proper that the Conservative government gives this power over to the British people. Walk back in, right? Now, he could have had somebody standing with an umbrella, but that would have looked bad because he's so rich. He could just have stood with an umbrella. Read out a couple of lines like that, and off he goes. So he's done that. He looked fucking ridiculous, soaked to the skin. The wife's running him a bath with Redox and all that because she's like, oh, he's soaked to the bone. And he goes. Then they had him in a brewery. One of the first days of campaigning was a brewery. Now, if you're a failing government that you have been for 14 years, your rivers and your beaches are full of shite, your economy has completely tanked, and the country is at breaking point with its NHS and its infrastructure, I would suggest they don't send you to a brewery, right? Because it looks like you can't organise one. Then they brought him to Belfast and they had him in the Titanic Museum.
Second ship.
Like, you can't organise a piss up in a brewery and now you're at, like, the Titanic Museum, mate. Do you know? Oh, fuck it. Somebody in your advisors are just sitting going, where else can we put him? So
a farm where pigs fly.
The brewery is always it's always the rich politicians' tactic of
working man.
Oh, he loves a fucking pint.
Working man. So this is a real
He
thing.
can't be rich. He's drinking from a glass.
Farage done this very well continually for over a decade of being in pubs with a pint of English bitter. You know, you're no fucking wrong talking about you, right? But a pint of English bitter. You know, he's standing there in tweeds. This is a man who went to a prep school and was then a banker in the city. Yeah. He put a tweet up long before I came off Twitter about some kind of chop house in London closing down and how sad he was about it because the chop house for him was somewhere that the bankers would go at lunchtime and have drinks, have food, head back to the office, right? Just living a lovely life in the 80s with their red braces and their fucking stripy shirts. And I'm sitting looking at this going, well, no, Nigel, because here's you again hacking back to a day where you don't realise that now probably those people sitting in those offices, some of them may have a glass of wine on the odd occasion at lunch. They probably go to the gym because they don't get a chance to go to the gym. They probably eat sushi. They probably go for a walk, right? Because they're not sitting bevying, but you're harking back to this wonderful time when you could do that. And people go, he's such a man of the people. He talks so much sense. He's such a patriot. Nigel Farage is so much of a patriot that he's now away to help Trump with his campaign in America and not help reform and not be a voice piece for reform.
And refusing to even stand for reform.
Aye, because he's never won a British parliamentary seat. You know, he was a MEP, right? But he's never won.
Which was more of a protest vote than it was an endorsement of him.
Exactly.
He wasn't going to represent in Europe, he was going to get out of Europe.
People who voted for him had no real interest in European politics.
No, I mean, it's the type of big fucking fat-headed guy in his 50s, 60s with short sleeve shirt, like white shirt, no tie, sitting going, I thought Brexit would put a cork in the Channel Tunnel, as he's sitting with brie and French red wine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That
In his
is-
apartment.
I used to work with a guy who had an apartment in Spain and then had to pay something like 10 grand for lawyers here and lawyers there to apply for citizenship so that he could go for more than 90 days. And I went, did you vote for Brexit? And he went, aye. And I was like, you fucking idiot. Because they just seen all this kind of nationalistic bullshit and they just fucking harped onto it. The other problem the Conservatives got is obviously over the term of this Parliament, like people like Theresa May and stuff have said, but I'm going to stand down at the next election, right? And you go, well, Theresa May's done, 25, 26 years in politics. She was the longest serving Home Secretary in this country, and she was a Prime Minister who I think, and I'm no fan of the Tories, and I'm no fan of Theresa May, but she had a bit of a tough hand with the Brexit situation because they basically manoeuvred her out to get that fucking shambles Boris in.
Yeah.
So I think, and I'm not saying she was a great Home Secretary either, but she was a woman who I believed that she believed in public service, albeit not by the methods of which I would have done, right?
Yeah.
And she and others are standing down. That was already known, but as you're now seeing, there is a ton of politicians standing down.
Yeah.
Michael Gove fucking standing down. Nadine Zahawi standing down. A man who was claiming expenses for heating his stables and had a £5 million tax bill that he mistakenly forgot to pay. Right? And I'm sitting going, these are the architects and the destroyers of everything in this country. We can talk about Cameron and Osborne and austerity. Absolutely. They done damage. Absolutely. Theresa May done damage. Then we start to get into the realms of Boris and Liz Truss and Sunak, because Sunak's trying to move his party so far to the right because they're so worried about the reform vote. Right? If you're going Tory to Labour, that's a massive leap. Maybe back in the day, not so much now.
Yeah.
If you're going Tory to reform, you're just going for a more extreme version, and they've already had the extremities of that in their party. People like Steve Baker, fucking weasel of a man. And you see these people now starting to resign, and you're sitting and I won't be standing, and you're going, Michael Gove, absolute destroyer of this country. Nadine Zahawi, absolute shambles, and these real right of the party people are leaving, and I'm sitting going, someone should be holding you to account for the destruction that has been done to the United Kingdom, because you all played a part in that, and not a bit part. You all played a part in it, and a very strong part in it. You have, I mean, you're looking at Jeremy Hunt might possibly lose his seat, the Chancellor losing his seat. I mean, that's almost unheard of to a degree. So I think Jeremy Hunt, a man who was the longest serving health secretary in Britain, and then turned round when he was out of office and went, we really need to fix the NHS. You fucking destroyed it. You, because you have run the NHS to a point of critical need that almost I'm of the opinion that you've made your society so ill and so sick that when you go to sell this off, you can really go for the highest bidder going, hey, it's a wanting market. They're all fucked. COPD, anxiety, mental health, heart conditions, cancers. They're fucked. Yous are going to make a mint. Much are you willing to pay this company because I've got money in that company?
Yeah, bastards.
I think people are genuinely at an end. And in my new show, I do a kind of monologue at the end, which might or might not stay in. We don't know. Paddy's seen it.
I think it's gone.
Right?
It's very political, but it's fucking great, like.
But at no point was it jingoistic.
Yeah.
Because it was about enough.
It's enough, yeah.
We have all had enough, regardless if you're in Guildford, Brighton, Bristol, Bournemouth, Aberdeen, Wick, Shetland, it doesn't matter. we've all had enough and no more. And I think that feeling, even if you do go for reform, if you're in the home counties and all that, and that's what you're going to vote, knock yourself out. But at the end of the day, I think people have genuinely just had enough. They're exhausted. They are tired. They just want to be able to get up in the morning, go to their work, put into their pensions, right, through their company, come home at night, have food in the fridge to feed their children, make sure their kids can go to school without the school falling on top of them. They can sit in a warm, heated classroom and learn, and they've got a belly full of breakfast, because that's not been happening. That your old people, your pensioners aren't getting looked after. When I do a leavers thing at my old school, I tell them, 3 times in your life you vote for you. Right? Your first election you vote for you. Now you might be 18, you might be 22, right? Whatever it is. Your first election you vote for you, and you're looking at your education, and you're looking at how you feel politically, and you'll probably be quite to the left and all that kind of stuff, and you will vote for that. And then your second one, you've came out of university, you might be working, you might be moving up within your trade if you've had an apprenticeship. You start looking at how you can buy a house, how you can start to get your roots in this life, because you're no longer a kid anymore. You're in your mid to late 20s and you're starting to look towards your future. And then the third time you vote, you'll be in your 30s and you've maybe became a parent, right? You've maybe bought a house with another person. You're looking at their career. They maybe work in the NHS, whatever, and you vote for what's good for you and good for your family, as it were, as a 2, a 3 or a 4. After that, you start to vote for your kids' education and your parents' care. Social care for you. How are my parents going to be? What are they doing to the pensions? Am I going to be able to get care in for my parents? Because I'm now hitting my 40s and my kids are now teenagers. And what likes their access to further and higher education? What likes their access to the job market? So you start to not vote for you. You start to vote for the people that came before you and the people that you've created that are coming after you, because you start to look at their welfare. And then you start to do that. And then unfortunately in this country, we have a generation of baby boomers who have never done that, because they were given everything, because they were post-war Britain. And between 1945 and 1979, the inequality and poverty gap narrowed more than at any other time in British history. Then Thatcher came in and fucked that for everybody. But that baby boom generation, they came from council houses and schemes, kind of new towns that were built in the outskirts of cities, and they got social mobility and they could buy a house and they could own a car, and they were the first generation to really get foreign holidays. And so they've always had that. Harold Wilson said, "You've never had it so good," and he was right. And at the top of that, Britain's place in the world changed from a kind of empire place where it was we are Britain and we own you and we own you. And then obviously after the Second World War, you can't have an empire. So they gradually lost the empire. But technologically and musically and in art in general, Britain went to the forefront. So they still had their place. They still had their place in the world. It might not have been underneath a jackboot, but they still had their place. And then those baby boomers are your Brexit voters. Not all of them, obviously, but they are your Brexit voters. And they are people that kind of harp back to this time that Nigel Farage and Jacob Rees-Mogg kind of sell you a Britain of, cricket in the county green on a Saturday and homemade lemonade. When actually the Britain that they are harking back to is fucking workhouses and putting children up chimneys.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what a food bank is.
Yeah.
Right? That level of poverty. But they have said to these baby boomers, remember when we were white? Remember we were a white country, eh?
It's like dog whistle terms for
Absolutely.
that. They will never come out and go, remember there weren't so many brown taxi drivers? But that's really what they mean.
Yeah, or it was like, remember black people used to be the bus conductors in London buses, but now their children and grandchildren are doctors and they own businesses.
Remember, we didn't know the words halal.
And that's a thing.
Yeah.
And they've sold that image, and the baby boom generation in particular have hankered onto it. This is a generation that grew up in school with a map where a third of the world was pink because we owned it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think we now have less baby boomers because that's how life is. And I think you will see people really going to tactically vote. People will vote for the Lib Dems, you know, like in your kind of Somersets and Devons or whatever, that, you know, small conservative majorities, they'll never be Labour, but they'll go Lib Dems. They'll feel safe voting for a Liberal Democrat because they don't see them as Labour, but they see them as something that's a kind of nice middle ground. It's a bit more of a fair society.
I think the difference now is you'll have a generation, it's their first general election, who I would argue is the most politically mobilised young generation in a long time.
They absolutely have to be.
Well, because they've been dicked for years before.
My generation was quite political in the sense that, you know, I was born in January 1980. Margaret Thatcher had been in 10 months. My whole education was underneath a Conservative government.
Yeah.
I left school in something like, I think it was say like the 1st of June 1997. Tony Blair had only been in power 4 weeks. So we were but also we grew up with the miners' strike.
Yeah.
Right? The steelworks closing down. Like where I stay in Glasgow, I went to school in a place called Coatbridge, but the surrounding areas of that was heavy industrialised work. It was Ravenscraig, which was like one of the biggest steel manufacturing plants in Europe. There was mines. Now, I don't think you want people working down mines, right? Because it's no good. You don't really want people working in steel plants and the danger and everything like that. But those skills are gone. But also, it's fine to say we're moving to a service sector industry, but you have to train the people, and that's where they didn't.
Yeah.
You know, like I remember the Yule and Dodds lorries crossing the picket lines and getting, I mean, it was like chaos. And still, to this day, in those towns, in the outskirts of Glasgow and in Lanarkshire, North Lanarkshire and South Lanarkshire, people still hate Yule and Dodds for crossing those lines. You go to mining villages in Wales and there are still family members that don't talk to each other because one was a scab and they live across the road from each other. Still don't talk to each other because one was a scab. So as a generation, we were quite political. But I think now kids are so engaged now because they're like, the planet's fucked. Housing is fucked. My education is fucked. You've taken away free movement. I can't travel around Europe and go and see the world and experience things in other cultures, albeit European, but there's still other cultures.
Yeah.
I can't be educated abroad because you've taken away the Erasmus scheme. I can't get a job. And if I do get a job, I need to work for minimum wage because that's you.
Yeah.
And you don't put in a living wage. You call it a living wage, but it's a fucking minimum wage. You know, I need to work 2 and 3 jobs. But if I go to Germany, I work for 8 hours a day because that's a working time directive.
Yeah.
If I go to France, I work for 8 hours a day. And if I'm out with the big cities in France, I get a Wednesday afternoon off because that's family time. And you go into your work and you go into your school on a Saturday morning because that's how you balance that. And you go, we work, like we have the American ideology. We chose to go more American of work till you drop.
Yeah.
And if you're rich, well done. And if you're not, it's your fault.
If you're not, keep working. Keep working, boy.
As opposed to the European
You have to
going,
work instead of working to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to.
You've got bootstraps, you pull yourself up by them.
Yeah. And I think people have just had enough. And it'll never really change with regards to that stuff because we're too busy doffing caps and waving wee flags at any national celebration. But until like, you need to get rid of the Conservatives. But then, you know, I look at Labour
They're a fucking mess.
and I go, I don't
They were
understand
not
why
even the party that they were, like.
the fuck, you know.
And you know, they did change the time, like, because I can remember the whole fucking D-Ream, fucking Tony Blair coming in, things
Yeah,
can
so
only get better.
how old were you then? I was 17.
I was 17 too.
Yeah.
I wasn't
I'm born in May 1980, so like we're like a couple of months apart. But it was one of them ones I can remember, like a feeling. Somebody asked me in a podcast yesterday, like, what's one of the memories that you can remember, like a good memory of Belfast, and it's fucking insane. But one of my best ones was when Bill Clinton came and turned the lights on, because it felt like
A moment.
somebody important actually came to fucking
Somebody
Belfast
cares.
and fucking turned the lights on, and everybody stood together, and we were like, fuck, it was a bit of hope. And
And
Tony
do you know-
Blair and all them, and
Yeah.
you felt that, like we did. We felt like Tony Blair wants to fucking
Yeah, John
Yeah.
Major done a lot of the groundwork in that. To be fair to John Major done a lot of the groundwork in that, and he never really gets the kind of respect he deserves for a lot of the work he done. But obviously, you know, Alistair Campbell, Tony Blair, all kind of, you know, they got Mo Mowlam, you know, they got it all over the line, as well as the willingness, because you can take a horse to water, you can't make it
100%.
drink, and the willingness of the Northern Irish population, you know, 70% is a lot. You know, is a lot. You take that last remaining 30% and you're looking at the extremities of both sides there.
Yeah, people who you're never going to convince.
You're never going to
See, to be
convince.
honest, but we have all that. But see, at the end of the day, when it comes to the voting, it's green and blue. Like that. That's just the way it is here.
Yeah, I think
Like our politicians worked for fucking how long? 2 years? 3 years?
as an outsider looking in, right?
2 years and then 3 years.
But that's all, like, what you need, as an outsider looking in, far be it from me to preach to the people of Northern Ireland, right, about their political system. As an outsider looking in, the Good Friday Agreement, in my eyes, as an adult now, was a sticking plaster, right? It was the first step. It was putting a cloth in the wound to stop the blood, right, and apply the pressure. But you need to take that to hospital. It needs to get treated. It needs to get fixed, and it needs to get healed. Right? I think Michelle O'Neill comes across great. Right? Obviously, culturally, I suppose if I lived in this country, that's where I would maybe lean into. But I genuinely do think she comes across great. I think going to the King's funeral was a massive thing and all that. And what a lot of people kind of forget is, you know, the Queen and Prince Philip met Martin McGuinness, right? Which was also a very big thing. But what has to happen here now, Michelle O'Neill? What's your woman's name?
Pengelly?
Emma Little Pengelly.
Yes. So this is the deputy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
So
has never been voted in, like, ever.
Well, for by the by, right? This is your system that you've got.
Yeah.
Right? So bear in mind, you know, Anis Sarwar wasn't voted in. John Sweeney's not been voted in. You know, if we're going to go down that argument, you know, Liz Truss wasn't voted in, Rishi Sunak wasn't voted in, right? We have I don't know what your voting system is, but we've got a single transferable vote, I think it is in Scotland. So we have SPs who have never been voted in, but they're in on the list, right?
We have that.
Right,
We
so
have
it's
it.
proportional representation.
Because I remember they were trying to bring that in England, and the media ran such a dicky campaign.
20...
Oh, if the World Cup was STV, Poland would have won it. And it was like, that's not how that works.
Yeah. Nah.
And they knew that. They were being cunts.
Absolutely. But what it does do, and this is my other argument, is it takes away the power of two parties and it gives you a spread and a representation for all of your population, right, on some level.
Oh, yeah, listen, we'll have to have it 50-50 here, no matter what way it works.
But I think, so your woman Pignelli, is that it?
Pengelly, yeah.
Pengelly, she is obviously the daughter of a paramilitary. Is that right? A loyalist paramilitary?
Yep.
Michelle is obviously the daughter of a former prisoner, IRA member. So you have moved on, right? And it's great to see two women in that situation as well, not just a pale male and stale men, right? You've got two women in that position who understand the complexities and the gentleness of what this hub is
Yep.
and what it means in representation and what it means to people, to bring people who are not naturally aligned with you in, because you're saying, I know you might not like Sinn Féin, but I'm here to represent you, and your mum's not had a doctor's appointment for 3 weeks, right? That's really important, because ultimately that matters more.
Yeah.
So you've got this generation who is essentially our generation, Paddy, right? That's our generation now in power. And they've came from their backgrounds. And you and I, as much as I'm not from here, have came from those backgrounds in the sense that this is what we watched, we remember it. So you're now looking at the next generation and probably the generation after until it can really get properly healed.
Yeah.
But they have to do something where you're not going years without a parliament and just getting direct rule.
100%.
The other problem with that is that Sinn Féin won't take their seats in the Houses of Parliament, and the DUP do. So then you're sitting in a situation going, well, I'm not actually getting represented of where my government's coming from, because my government's now centralised in the UK, which is fine. But, you know, Scotland and Wales have got a devolved day. They can look after their own health service. They can look after their own education. And I've got fucking Sammy and Jeffers.
Not anymore, you don't.
Not anymore.
Don't worry about
that.
Don't worry about him.
But you've got nobody. If you've then placed a vote in the other box, you've got nobody representing you. And I completely understand why they don't take their seats, and that's entirely up. You know, that's no for me. But it's up to them to decide that, and I don't live here, so it's fine. But I do think you're probably looking now at the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren of the Troubles for that to dissolve through your society. I mean, I walk about Belfast now. I remember working in the airports when I was a spark. It's a fucking different world. You know, it really is.
No, it is completely.
And thankfully it is.
It's great to see, and we're glad that it's got that stage. But it is one of them, as you say, it's a fucking wound that's healing, but it's going to take time.
You look at like India and Pakistan, who's a much more modern partition. Well, we just go through partition bingo here this everywhere.
But this all started with that says, are you going to vote Tory?
Everywhere's
That's what that started on?
Yeah.
But no,
Come to Belfast and talk politics. Yes.
Aye. But I do think you've got a thing going on there where I think, and it won't happen in our lifetime, Paddy. It may happen in Williams, but it's it's going to take the children.
Independence. I think the independence will happen here, and I think it'll happen in Scotland too. The Scotland one was really hard for me to take because growing up somebody here who watched fucking family members or fucking people we knew fighting for fucking to try and break the fucking chains, and then in Scotland they fucking had the chance to do it by vote.
It was hard for me to watch because like, oh, they nearly got away, but we'll catch you. Fucking come back.
You know?
The problem that Scotland's got is it has a deep water loch in the Clyde, which gives you access to the Atlantic. It is rich in minerals around its seabed, and it has wind and water energy. England has droughts. We're an island surrounded by water, and it has droughts. Right? It's not a particularly big island either. Even like, and I was actually saying this the other day to my wife, that even like when I fly over, if I'm flying into London, if I'm flying into Gatwick, you need to fly over like Windsor, then you kind of come round the south coast, kind of Brighton way, and you come into Gatwick that way. And when you kind of get to that middle England bit and you kind of look down, it's really brown, right? Whereas, you know, Ireland and Scotland is just emerald green, you know, it's just dripping in greenery. And so is Wales. I was in Wales last month twice. I drove down to Wales and up. And one was in the real kind of northwest corner. Another one was Cardiff. Very, very, you know, as much as we're all the same geologically, we're very different geologically, right? But, and I just thought, they can never let Scotland go. And also, Scotland's quite an important place geopolitically. If you leave Glasgow and fly 5.5 hours, 6 hours east, you hit Moscow. If you leave Glasgow and 5.5 hours west, you hit New York. Very important.
Yeah.
That's why we had military infrastructure all around the northeast of Scotland. You know, you had Kinloss, you had Lookers, Lossiemouth, all that kind of stuff during the Cold War. So Scotland geographically is very important. It's probably the biggest landmass in the North Atlantic. There is no way for a minute, because I reckon what would happen is America would chat your door and go, hey, Scotland, how you doing? Listen.
We're best friends.
If I ever told you about South Korea, wait and I'll tell you about it. It's where we've got an aircraft carrier, just sits in the sea and we just put our jets up and just say, Kim, you fucking pipe down. How about we do that with you? But the North Sea, we'll give you money for doing that. You've got the infrastructure, but we'll make it better. And maybe see that barren land you've got in Sutherland that's quite uninhabitable. What about we build data farms there? We'll make that for your high-speed government. We don't interfere in your political system. We've got no interest in your political system. Here's your compromise, Scotland. See that deep water lock that's got Trident in it? We're putting our shit in there. And Scotland go, much money you give us? And you're going to keep us safe, so I don't actually need a massive military. Nah, I mean, you can have military personnel, but let us handle that. Why would you say no to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that will happen with Ireland too. I think America wants the whole of Ireland, but they want the whole island. They don't want anything. And that's what I think is pushing the economy here in terms of like Britain eventually leaving. I think like because why would they take so much interest in fucking creating peace? Do you know what I mean?
Well, their caucuses, their Irish caucus and their own political system within the Senate is fucking massive.
Yeah.
So you've got like the Jewish caucus, then you've got like the Irish caucus, the African American caucus, and the Irish one is absolutely massive. So certainly with your Democrats as well, that's all, because that's generally, it's Boston, it's New York, it's Eastern Seaboard. So they will naturally have to kind of do that thing. Because you know what they're like in America? Sure, I'm Irish. You're like, you've not been Irish for 150 years. Shut the fuck up. Yeah. But they've got to do that politically.
Yeah. So it's to like appeal to their base.
But you also just look at what they're fucking putting here at the minute. Like Apple's main factories is here.
Yeah.
Fucking Google.
Which is also a cultural change as well, because, they two big cranes. Which school did you go to? But if you've got Google and you've got Apple and you've got EE, nobody gives a fuck what school you went to. Nobody cares.
And that's what will change
that you're a William and a Paddy. And the young ones are like that now.
Yeah.
They don't.
The many young ones now, like friends of mine who go, oh, my daughter's going with a wee lad from the Shangle and they have a kid and there's a fight over if
it's weirder if you give a fuck. Like, there's the playful banter of it.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they'd be like, oh, you wee hun bastard. No, but it's not.
They would have been
genuine.
burnt out, whereas now, like, there's genuinely is mixed relationships. And nobody throws them out or puts anybody out or that.
It's genuinely bizarre if you give a fuck to that degree. It's weird.
It's a really funny thing, I think, isn't it? I read a book on Ian Paisley. And
Never!
There'll be no potpourri!
Wouldn't it be great if it had like sound effects in it?
An Ian Paisley audiobook.
With it?
Yeah. I totally.
Once upon a time,
there will be no Pope of Rome.
Do you know what?
I don't like him, but
is
he going to the... Where'd he go? He called the Pope the Antichrist.
Oh, in
Was it the...
Brussels?
In Brussels. Phenomenal banter.
Listen.
Don't like him? That's funny.
You see if you watch the stuff about him, like, it's fucking interesting as fuck. Like,
Really
he's
interesting.
a fucking character.
Really interesting. Big character. Big man. Ian Paisley absolutely ran the same campaign as any other type of charismatic leader.
Yeah.
And you can apply the same principles here, where I say to you, you good Protestant man, your life is terrible because you are overrun by these Catholics.
Yeah.
You hard-working white British man, your life is terrible because we're overrun with immigrants, right? These are the things. These are the things that's all the same that people do, when actually your life is terrible because you've not taken responsibility. Now, you might have had like a really unfortunate circumstance and a really hard start in life, and that's it. But most of the people I see, like especially with that right-wing fascism, is men who are unhappy at their life because they've made a balls of it. You know?
Yeah.
These men have been born in this country, raised in this country, and had all the benefits of being in this country, being a British passport holder, having a free health service, having free education for your children, all these things, and for them. And they fucked it. And then they see somebody without the same opportunities coming in, working 10 times harder than what they did, getting success, and then they go, how fucking dare these brown people take my jobs?
Because that's who gets politically mobilised, is people who are unhappy.
Disenfranchised.
If I'm happy and like my kids are happy and healthy and I have money, I don't give a fuck what's on the news. I'm not going to care. But it's when you're miserable and you start looking for reasons why that is. It's why you get incels joining ISIS. Because it can't possibly be my fault because I haven't showered in a week.
It's why people joined the IRA as well, wasn't it? It was the disenfranchised because their vote didn't count because it was a gerrymandered state. They couldn't get a job because of their name or where they had been educated.
The days.
Living in poor social housing of a much lesser condition than those of the same social class as them in the other side of the city, and then a rat-a-tat-tat at the door, there's a soldier putting a gun to your granny's chest or your granny's head. You're a 17-year-old man.
Yeah.
Of course, and you're living with that and you're watching that, and then all of a sudden you think, do you know what? I've had enough.
Yeah.
And that's the exact same thing that happens in Afghanistan, that happens in Iraq, that happens wherever you do that whole kind of disenfranchised, and then people go to the extremities,
and then
man.
that perpetuates, the violence, which then, if you're on the other side, you're going, well, I was just going to the shop and my granny got blew up and we didn't do anything. Just perpetuates
the Palestine and Israel thing, right? And just the other day I was sitting thinking, and I'm going, how many years is it going to take to come away from what's happening right now? Because what they have done is just breed a whole new wave. Like, you look, there's going to be, every one of them kids are just like, well, we're going to get killed anyway. So why?
Because Israel's policy is, okay, there's 2 leaders of Hamas in Rafah. We'll kill 50 kids to get those 2.
I don't even think that is their policy.
It's insane.
I
just think it's just fucking wipe them out.
And people need to be mindful that not every Jewish person feels affiliation with Israel, right? And not every Israeli agrees with what's going on with Netanyahu.
100%.
And also, not every Palestinian agreed with what Hamas done.
Yeah.
Right? And it's these people that are now the victims, like the hostages. Who's this? You know what I mean? Like, the hostages are just going about their business. The people of Gaza were just going about their business. And the fact that the West is sitting like that is disgusting. Yeah. And no other country in the world
would be allowed to do it.
Would be allowed to do that. And it's horrendous. What happened the other night in the news and what was in social media was absolutely horrific. And there must be consequences of some sort. And what happened in Rafah was outrageous. But at some point, we can march in the streets all we want. But at some point, it's going to take brave men and women to stand up as politicals and go, enough.
But this is what I've said, Susie. I mean, just look at what's been done. Like, there was 3,700 people killed in the Troubles here, right? Mm-hmm. And we're still fucking trying to heal from that. Look what has been killed over in there. And I'm going to myself, these kids when will this breed out? Like, the songs of rebellion will be fucking sang for the next 100 years from Palestinians.
I mean, it's been going from 1919 even earlier.
No, I know, so but this is the bloodiest it's been. This is the worst it's been.
Oh, do you mean Israel-Palestine?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also you need to look at the foundations of that, don't you? And the handing over of land.
Yeah.
Is it the Balmer or the Balmore?
Balfour.
Balfour. It was the Balfour lines, wasn't it? And when he says, like, you've got to live cheek by jowl. Yeah. Like the only way this is going to work is if you live cheek by jowl.
Yeah.
And then just gradually the emancipation. And it's awful. It's terrible. But somebody somewhere in power, in authority, has to do something, because Gaza is flattened and it's no right, and it's morally wrong, and morally wrong for the West to allow this.
But who's... And the question
If
is, and we
Putin
know
was
the
doing
answer...
this in Ukraine,
It would be the most horrendous thing ever. Who's standing up to America? Who is backing Israel? Who's doing that? And that's the, it's a grim point of view to take, but that is the realistic.
No, that's why that's why it's got the worst going.
Who can and who will say to America, wind your neck in? No one's going to do that.
There's also an element of America and Russia are playing this out through Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without bloodshed in themselves.
Israel and
without
Iran.
bloodshed in their own soldiers
America and Russia are playing this out, and it's through the whole Russia, Iran, Hamas, America, Israel, and
China possibly.
but also the other point is it's just innocent people dying.
No, but that's always the way it works. It's
it?
always the innocent. It's always the innocent.
First World War, just a fight between a king and a Kaiser.
Yeah.
Two cousins. I mean,
First World War was some cunt got lucky the car drove past the street he was on.
but it was then a king and a Kaiser who were cousins who then went to war with each other, and then honors.
But the only winners in it is the rich, because they're the ones that make money from it, or
it's only ever rich
power.
men that put poor men to war. That was a fundamental difference in the shift in Britain. Now I was talking about the poverty and the equality gap narrowing between 45 and 79.
Yeah.
That was because ultimately I think every single one of those men, and it was men who were serving in cabinet and serving as prime ministers and holding offices of state, had seen war.
They had served. There was people in the trenches and in the war together who would never have blended.
Captain and a soldier.
The machine gun bullets will hit us the same.
The captain soon realises the importance of the working class. So if you were in government in the 40s, you had seen the Great War. And if you were in government in the 60s, 70s, 50s, you had played a part on one level or another of the Second World War. And that then kind of neutralises the class lines.
Yeah.
Because there's really no such thing as class, even though there kind of is in the military, if you know what I mean. But you understand the importance of the farmer's son from Yorkshire who's 18, or, Captain Anthony Eden. Do you know what I mean? So you then have a different perspective on it, and that's why we now have the leaders that we have, because they have seen no hardship.
Well, they tried to push that, the spirit of the Blitz during the pandemic. Not the same.
No.
Not the same,
Clapping on a Thursday. Nobody was clapping during the Blitz because they were in an underground station.
If anything, that exacerbated the issue of class division, because the politicians were still getting the party. They were still getting to go wherever they wanted. But you couldn't go see your nanny die in a hospice.
Aye.
Not that you'd want to.
Also, though,
it's not the most desirable.
Tenerife.
Yeah.
Bulgarian.
Aye. But also, though, just that whole notion of the Blitz spirit is Britain at its finest. And, go, no, that was Britain on its knees.
Yeah.
That was Britain on its knees. And people were literally surviving. Let's not paint this as an amazing thing. Let's paint it as the fact that, we don't need to be broken as a country to gather spirit.
Yeah, Britain during the Blitz was just Churchill praying the fucking waves keep crashing.
Yeah,
praying that Joseph Stalin...
Churchill shitting himself because he knows we're fucked.
Yeah. Praying that Stalin picked his side. That was it.
Yeah.
Praying that one of the worst dictators in the 20th century
is going to back him up.
Going to back your side.
Yeah. It was Churchill 3 whiskey bottles down going, thank fuck it's raining today.
Aye. And it's that kind of thing as well, though, where you go, other countries can celebrate and come together and have this kind of joined up, we are as one, right? We fucking can't. We need to go back to a time when the country was on its knees, when it was broken, and go, weren't we fucking brilliant? Because that's where they want you, on your knees, to go, if
Keep
we're
reminding.
broken, we'll be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when
What a
that's when
fucking
you see
mindset
how
is
good
that?
we are when we're at our worst.
Aye. And you're like, this is...
But they were always divide and conquer, Susie, so it's always been a fucking thing. And it's went against them now. Do you know what
Can
I'm
it be equal? A country that physically cannot be equal. It physically struggles to be equal. That's what Brexit was about. That's what
I think
was
that's
about.
becoming, across Western democracies, a more common thing. That even in Ireland, which has always been very liberal and quite welcoming
the right,
to
the
everyone.
right.
The protests.
Jesus fucking Christ.
The right wing in Ireland
Down
is the
south
most...
is the racist one now. What the fuck?
When did that happen?
That's our thing.
Right,
They're
see,
taking it.
Right wing fascism in Ireland is one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever heard in
it's
my
went
life,
down.
because it makes no sense.
No sense. It's went down, but what they have said is the levels of like protests have went down, but the protests that still happen have got more violent, which is a fucking story.
And it's also just the sentiment in general it's bizarre.
But apart from all that, Susie, what have you got up? Because we need to get that in.
I've got the Edinburgh Fringe. I'll be there, Studio 3, up at George Square Gardens. I've got work in progresses everywhere.
What are you doing, sorry, in the French?
Studio 3 with Assembly up at George Square Gardens at 7:45 every night. It's a 250-seater, so...
Very good.
Wee
It's
buns.
on the same time as
Wee buns,
around my
Susie.
show, so I can't
Wee
leave it.
buns. I have seen Susie's show.
Yeah.
And I have to say, go and see it.
Great show.
Honestly, hands down. I was saying to somebody yesterday, I think it was Willow White and Narraglolla, genuinely one of the best shows I've seen. And I'm not saying that lately. I'm not just saying it because you're here. I say that to other people. I stood in the theatre at the end, and Krista took me out and brought me up into the crowd to watch the end. And I swear to God, at the end of it, I was going, Susie's going to be Prime Minister one day.
Imagine 4-day week.
I swear to God.
I bring in a 4-day week.
I was just standing there going, holy fuck. And the audience, you just had them. Like, it was just, the show was that good. But the end, the way you ended it, I was just like, fuck. And I love people doing stuff that's not the same, if you know what I mean. Not your typical comedy show. And I always wanted to put a bit into one of my shows where I made people cry and then brought them back up again. And I'd done it one time, and I loved the fact that I'd done it. Yours was like a fucking totally... I was just like in awe, just standing there, and I was like, fuck. And it was amazing. It was fucking amazing. And it was perfect from start to finish. It was just the whole way through. It was just like...
It's just a wee journey, that show. It's called The Merchant of Menace.
Do you genuinely, do you think that's the best show you've ever wrote or done, or...
Yeah, I think you always hope that every show is better than the last show. So my show that you've seen, Femme Fatality, last year's show that you've seen at the Fringe, that's on BBC iPlayer.
Yeah.
That was the one I recorded at the King's March 2023. That's on BBC iPlayer, so you can catch that on there. But this show's a different... So Femme Fatality was it's quite vulnerable. It's kind of me saying to people, this was the time and this is what it was like.
I think I related to it so much because I was an 80s baby as well.
Yeah.
But it was your story, and it was a different story from mine. Like, I had different identity crises living here.
Yeah.
But watching your ones, I was going, fuck. And it brought me on a journey of my own, if you know what I mean. And it was good, your story. But that next one was just like, I was watching it and seeing, like, comedy greats coming out in you.
Thanks,
Do you know what I mean? Like, you see
you.
bits and you're going, fucking hell. And I don't enjoy watching comedy as much as I used to.
Yeah, because you look at it
Yeah,
a completely
fucking hate it.
different way, don't you?
Yeah. But I literally sat and just watched it, and I was just like, fucking hell. And anybody I've spoke to about it, I was just like, I'm not even going to tell you. Go and have your own experience of this, because you need to see it. You need to see it. It's just... I think if people came to see your show, they would fucking go, do you know what? That was it wasn't a waste of time.
Yeah. I enjoyed that show. What was really nice about Femme Fatality at last year's Fringe is I got loads of messages and socials from people who came with their kids, right? So their kids were like 14 and up. And some came with like older kids, you know, who are in their late teens, came with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, you know, their kids, whatever, and family nights out. And I would get a message through, and it would actually generally be for the dad going, "Thanks so much for that show last night, really enjoyed it. We came home and we got a pizza, and it started a discussion of my kids going, was it really like that? Is that bit that she was speaking about there, is that what they done on TV?" And aye, no bother. And then guys for building sites messaging me going, I'd have loved to have worked for you in a building site, man, what a laugh, because there's a whole big bit about me working in building sites and the pure nonsense of what happens when you work in a building site at that time, and you know, I talk about my straight guy friends and how they're the best men I've ever known, but they're fucking useless at everything. And do you know, and it's a real thing about, it's my journey and my story, but it's a real thing about, let's have a laugh, right? Let's put things into context and let's have a laugh, and let's just, it's okay to laugh at this because I've dealt with this shit, but also it's very, very funny and I want to share it with you and we'll just have a really lovely time. And like the Victoria's Secret stuff is fucking, like, people love that story.
Yeah, because
you know?
it's everybody knows a useless fucking wee lad or son or nephew or, do you know, yeah, but you know what I mean?
But also it's that great thing as well that you make things cross-generational, that a family can sit there with a 16-year-old, a 22-year-old and their boyfriend and mum and dad or mum and stepdad or whoever it may be, and you're talking about something that was 30, 40 years ago, but you make it relevant to these kids.
Yes, it's like putting a clip of Grange Hill up where they mention there was a black scene in it, one thing, and they'll put that up and people will talk about it and go, no way that was on TV.
And you go, yeah,
it fucking
yeah,
was.
it was.
What's it like?
Also,
So there was a
having
scene in Grange Hill where the wee lad was talking to his best friend who was a white girl, and they were like 13 in Grange Hill, and he says, oh, they're calling me this, they're making monkey noises, and they're calling me this and they're calling that, and she, at the end of it, she's like hugging him. I remember this as a kid, this scene, right? And she went, it's not your fault that you're a ignorant, is what she says. And
Jesus.
but that was on kids' TV.
Yeah, that was the language.
You know, so when Susie does parts, and there was stuff that Susie talked about, I went, I forgot that was on. I forgot that was on. You know, and you see it, and people watch stuff and they go, Jesus, but that wasn't just TV, that was society.
Oh, I know, like, even for me, growing up as a kid, I remember late 90s TV, you look back and you're like, this is creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
Who was the teenager they did a countdown to her turning 18 in the sun?
Charlotte Church.
Charlotte Church. She was like 15 and they're like, oh, almost time. As though some cunt reading The Sun gets a crack at Charlotte Church when she turns 60. It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of that.
I think as well, like if a family can go home, or a couple, or like a mum and daughter, or a mum and son, or dad and whoever, can go home, sit round the table and have a discussion about something, I think you've done your job.
100%.
If
And
people
more,
have left
and,
laughing,
well, Susie,
right, that's the job, right?
The job is making people laugh, but that your two shows, both of them different ways they were, but it went way above that. That's what I mean. Like it's if somebody was talking about a ticket price, they'll go, well, I couldn't have paid for that. And if somebody goes to watch a movie in a cinema, there's people go and watch movies all the time, and they leave the cinema and they don't talk about the movie they watch.
Yeah.
There's people go and watch stuff and they go, oh, what did you think that was about? You know, likes of the Green Mile fucking movie. Oh, I thought it was the story of Jesus. I thought it was that. Your show opened up that for that to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Aye. And I always think, and maybe it's different, right? Maybe people are like, oh yeah, comedians should stop trying to save the world, right? And you go, yeah, but you know what? I'm a gay working class woman. Maybe I need to say something because there's other working class women, or there's gay women who maybe have got shit to say and they don't feel that they can.
Yeah.
So maybe if I say it, and you know what, maybe if I just, if I make one person think about something or invoke that conversation round a kitchen table where a mum and a dad go, yeah, it was exactly like that in television. And they go, geez. And then the mum and dad are kind of saying to them, but it wasn't like that for me, because I'm not, because obviously I'm not gay. I'm with your father, I'm with your mother, whatever. But I remember it. But, you know, then it's, I remember your uncle, whoever, coming out, and it was a really difficult time, and your grandmother was really upset. And suddenly they start to get a broader picture of people's struggles. And I always think, if you can understand someone's struggle, it makes you more sympathetic to the world. You know, it's always like go and travel somewhere that's a bit odd.
Yeah.
Because you'll be a stranger in a foreign land, and that'll make you more compassionate to the strangers in your land. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just try and be a good person.
Well, and I think comedy now has a bigger platform for that. I think that comedians now, it used to be like working man's club saying stuff that people didn't want to say, and it was racist, and it was
took the wife out last night with one punch. Oh, for fuck's sake.
And I think society's not like that.
No, it's not. And what I find fascinating when we do corporates, right, is I do a lot of construction corporates, right, and manufacturing corporates and stuff like that. And I walk into that room, that room's probably 55-60% male, 35-40% female, right? A lot of those women are bosses of those men. A lot of those women have brought their partners through that thing, and their partner is a man. And when you done those gigs traditionally, all the men would look to their boss, who was a man, and if he laughed, they would laugh, right? That's totally changed. Because, how old are you, William?
27.
27, right? So let's say you're sitting as a quantity surveyor.
Yeah.
Your boss, the commercial director's a 48-year-old woman. Your senior quantity surveyor is a 36-year-old woman, and your line manager is maybe a 31-year-old guy. Somebody does a misogynistic joke, a sexist joke, right? At your age and your generation, you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not even going, I'm going to pretend not to laugh. You're just sitting going, what the fuck? Because you respect these women.
Yeah.
Because these women teach you. These women employ you. These women, right? And also you've maybe got sisters and family members and all that, right? You're of a different generation. So now I'll sit at those corporates and I see women, and men react entirely different. But not just because there's women there, because men are now self-aware, and that's it, and they go, I've got fucking 3 daughters. Don't be talking like that. I've got 3 daughters. Men in their 60s who would have laughed 25 years ago are now sitting going, I'm not comfortable with that. Yeah. Because things have changed. The only
time I would say if someone does a really off-colour joke is if you've made it clear you don't think that.
Yeah.
And you've done some good. And I'm like, all right, you can tell
when
someone's doing it just like, you know, they're just doing it like to be a dick. They know this is a bad thing to say and they're doing it for silliness.
Yeah.
I can laugh at that, but you can't like open with that. That can't be your first. You've made it clear to me. You're quite a nice person and you're just fucking around.
Aye. Yeah. And it's also that thing as well where I was seeing how in the past 10 years, a lot of women, high profile women, in high office or industry or whatever, have came out and have kind of spoke about the effects of the menopause and all that, right? And I was talking to this woman after a gig, and she was like 54, and I was saying how that kind of makes a difference. If women say stuff, it can make a difference if they can get through to the guys. And I'm in a fortunate position where I can get through to guys, right? Because I worked in the sites and I've always had guy pals, so the guys go, that's a wee lesbian I can relate to, right? And I was talking to this woman, and it was quite funny. She had the Sunday papers, and there was a massive article in it, and it was a woman in high office who was talking about the menopause and the effect of the menopause, and her man, who was not even in the room when the weans were born, went, is that right? Is that what you've been through? Is that how you were? Aye, sweating and all that. And he was like, hey, I had no idea. I'm sorry. I had no idea. And he like came in that night with a bunch of flowers, like, and it wasn't an anniversary or birthday, and he was just like, I'm sorry for maybe no understanding how big a thing that was. Now, the article he was reading was obviously from a woman that he respected, right?
In order for him to
And
pay attention to it.
whatever
or
line
listen
of
to it.
work
Yeah.
she was in. And he sat and he was like, wait a minute. It was almost like, fuck, this makes perfect sense. Is this why you forget
Slap
things?
in
Is
the
this
head
why you...
moment, like.
And I thought, that's the power that you can have.
Yeah.
That you can physically hold a mirror up to somebody by talking about something in your life that then gets a conversation going and makes the world better. What a fucking great job.
No, it is.
Do you know what I mean?
And,
And you get to have a laugh.
Yeah.
You get to do it through the medium of laughter.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's
So
not. It's not even like as a politician or as a fucking thing. It's like people are coming to let go and relax and
relax,
laugh
but then
have
they
a-
walk out and they're sitting in the train going home going, here, see that bit in that show? Great.
Yeah.
You know, that guy at the kitchen table that morning.
And they don't have to agree with everything you say.
No, absolutely not. Do you know what I mean?
As long as you give them a bit of awareness about it, do you get what I mean?
If you've set that up right and signposted it through your show without obviously signposting it.
Yeah.
They don't have to have sympathy for you. They just have to have sympathy for somebody maybe they know who is going through the same thing.
That's it.
And that's what you're doing.
That's it. And it's always really important when you're writing your shows that you signpost it, because then that leads to that. And if you don't signpost it, it kind of blindsides. And you're not looking to blindside, you're just looking to go. And then suddenly it's like all the wee Lego bricks just fall into one.
Yeah.
It's a fucking beautiful, beautiful thing. I love it.
Well, fair play to you. You're doing it top marks.
Thanks for having me back on, boys.
No, well,
You're in
welcome.
Edinburgh, aren't you?
Yes, I'm doing the Clover in the Bristol Square.
Oh, nice. Underbelly.
6:55 Underbelly, yeah.
5 to 7 to 5 to 8.
Yeah.
Smashing.
Yeah, that's why I was really, like, I'm just going to miss your show. It's a wee bit of overlap, which is a melt.
Fuck.
But I don't even have a day off.
Do you not?
Because I'm going on the last day of the Fringe. There's a wrestling show on in London, so I'm taking it off at the end, going down to London. Going to Wembley.
Tell me you're a virgin without telling me you're a virgin.
Fucking love wrestling. I have no apologies for it.
Something came into my head when we were talking about Paisley. If he hadn't been a politician, he'd have been a great wrestler.
Oh, he
He'd
fucking
have
would
been a
have
great
been, man.
manager.
Wouldn't he?
Great manager.
Could you imagine Paisley in the WWF
Oh, he'd have been
Federation in the 80s?
I'm fairly certain there
A
was
big
someone
orange
who's
leotard. Fuck.
Space Girls one?
I know you.
Ulster says no!
His finishing move, the red hand of Ulster.
Red hand of
I am
Right,
good friends
there you
with
go.
CMB.
He's
Yes.
a big wrestling fan.
I know, he talks about it and I just look at him, I just stare at him. Most things Christopher talks about, I just stare at him, I'm like that. I don't know, you need to explain.
Do you know
this to me.
what? I don't think we've had a guest on that talked for so long on this show and we didn't say anything. I think you've just fucking got there. We're going to have to get a board. No, we
Sorry,
didn't
lads.
cap you.
Oh,
No.
like the Stig?
The Stig,
Yeah.
the Stig. Oh,
The least
get
amount
him
that
on
they've
corner. Because like we were just sitting there listening to you.
That's
It's
everybody comes on though from here that does this podcast to come on the, like, you don't get a fucking word in.
Gary Little complained and says you never get talking.
Yeah, them two
well,
just talk over each other.
Yeah.
But
You get so used to it though.
Will
doing
it be an
podcasts.
alright pod, do you think, or will it
Oh,
be boring?
no,
Yeah, you're grand.
class.
100%.
Grand.
Cool.
Yeah.
But Susie,
thank you
I
very
have to
much.
go and get the
Lads.
See Susie and Edinburgh.
Yes, if you don't see Susie in Edinburgh, you'll probably see her doing gigs with me somewhere.
magic.
Hopefully in
Be
Dublin
magic.
and Belfast again, and you'll see her.
Come see me in Edinburgh.
hopefully
or come see
Derry.
me on tour.
Hopefully,
Derry.
Derry. I didn't want to say because I didn't know if you could go or
Oh,
not.
fucking sort it. Oh, be good.
Come see me in the waterfront.
Yes,
Oh,
come see in the
nice.
Odyssey. In Derry,
In the Odyssey.
in Dublin. Nobody's buying tickets in Dublin. Hurry
I'm
up and
also
buy
doing
them.
Derry and Dublin. Also, no one's buying tickets. Please go.
Derry's
Please.
glad. Derry's great. Glasgow's great. Glasgow, Susie,
off so
you
much
know
more than
Glasgow. Susie's helped me out there because I done the Kings with her, and loads of people have bought tickets who were at her show.
Yeah,
They'll love
great.
it, man. They'll love it. They'll love it.
It was great.
They loved you.
Absolutely. It was,
So many of them were just like,
Yeah.
Susie, where's Pat? And I was like, go and see him at the O2.
do you know what I mean? Smashing.
Come see me in Dublin, please, for the love of fuck.
I have 60 tickets, so that's why I drove to Dublin just to do a podcast.
Yeah, I know.
Where are you doing in Dublin?
What?
Where are you doing in
The
Dublin?
Olympia.
Where are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing the Sugar Club. I'm all right. I'm on the same amount of tickets sold.
The most tickets I've ever sold in Dublin's 100, and they put me from 100-seater till a fucking 2,000-seater.
Cracking.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm a 200-seater. I'm a quarter gone. You
You'll be
need it
fine.
more. I'm
You'll
all
be
right.
fine.
Yeah.
Don't buy tickets to Williams. Buy tickets, man. What do you do? What do you?
Ah, fuck. I don't know. End of November. Start
And
of
the
December.
8th of October, you can go.
I told you I did the Olympia to 50 people before, didn't I?
Yeah, for your mom.
Doing warm up for David Cross.
David Cross, who was in.
But I was on 2
the
hours
Chipmunks.
before he was on.
2 hours?
2 hours, then a 40-minute break, then his other support act, then him.
That's a fucking festival.
Isn't it?
That's not a gig. That's a
The
festival.
Chipmunks is on in between it
Yeah.
too. Where the Chipmunks?
50 people in a 1,200-seater.
Oh my fucking god.
And here, hard to call.
Oh, not great.
All the 50 of them have bought tickets to your Sugar Club.
I
That's
feel
your audience.
sorry for that wee lads. Remember that gig he
Make a
done?
wish.
It
He
was
tried
fucking awful.
hard.
It was
The
fucking
Make-A-Wish
awful.
Kid, do you remember him?
Yeah. It was fucking terrible. Fun to do. I
brilliant,
just
man.
did it so I could meet David Cross. That was literally the only reason.
Fair dues, mate.
Right, I have to go and get the children. Thank you very much, Susie.
Thank you.
Take 'em with
See
her.
yous later.
Right, see you later.
See you later.